Started. I am Emma. I'm the chair of the board of directors, and I just wanted to welcome everyone. I think I say this all the time when we get together, but it's so nice to see everyone and to be together today. So thank you for being here. I want to say on behalf of the board that we are super excited to see the videos and to hear the stories and to see so many familiar faces in the video. The history of the organization is obviously quite unique, and it feels really exciting to have a video, or a few videos, I guess, that we can capture that history and share that with people. So thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Emma. I'm Marg McLean, and I'm with Community Living St.Marys and Area as the Executive Director, and I'm really thrilled to see everybody here today. This has been a wonderful project to be part of, and many of you will know that this Stories project grew out of a desire to learn from the pioneers and the innovators of our organization. And oftentimes they were better known as the mums, to be honest, that built our association. So we wanted to make sure we captured stories so that we could bring the history of community living St.Marys and Area to life in a format that's accessible to everyone. So I'm going to say a few more things later on, but for right now I just want us to get started because I think we're all here and we're all interested and keen on watching some film. So we're going to start with that. I just want to let you know that we do have a couple of panels after the first set of films. And we're going to kind of stick to a time frame. So just so that you know, we'll try and be finished by 3:45 today. If you have to leave before that, that's okay. There's a couple people who are going to be joining us as we get started. So anyway, with that, I think I'll pass it over to Marilyn Haywood, our project coordinator, and Simon Brothers from Powerline Films. And I will say a bit more about them at the end of the day.
Simon and I have already had an argument about who's going first, and he said I should, and I said he should, so I will.
Good.
You'll be all really happy. I'm going to make this very short because we really, really want to see this film, but I have some thank yous that I have to give. First of all, thank you for your patience. You have no idea how many people stopped me downtown on the street over the last 18 months and said, so, when are we going to get to see the film? And I always said, I don't know. So I can't believe we're here today, and thank you for coming. Thank you for your willingness to participate. Only 3 people said no, and you know there probably were over 100 people that were asked. So I just chalked that up to stage fright, and I hope they're watching today and seeing what they're missing. Thank you to Simon and to his team, because honestly I knew nothing about filmmaking, and he taught me and lots of you a whole lot of stuff, and he was patient. And at the end, lots of times when I'd run out of questions, he found 2 or 3 more, so he kind of saved the day. So thank you, Simon.
Thanks.
Personally, this project meant a lot to me personally. I've said that twice, but it did. I knew bits of the history. I'd worked here for a lot of years, but in just chunks of time. And the person I learned the most from was Richard Oliver, and you're going to see that very shortly. Those very early years from the mid-1960s up to 1979 were just amazing years. So it was great to have that time to learn some of that stuff. Also, I got to spend lots of time with so many other people and so many special memories. Barb, I won't cry. Barb Taylor and Beverly Slater and Richard and Bill Gow, What a gift they're giving us today. We laughed a lot, we reminisced, and there were some surprises too, but I'm not going to tell you any of those today, some other time. So as you see these folks in the film today and see yourselves, you enjoy the memories and enjoy seeing yourselves as legitimate movie stars. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. I don't have too much to say. I certainly learned a lot about St. Mary's. I was talking to someone a few minutes ago, and I can't walk 2 blocks in the town of St. Mary's without stumbling into somebody that appears in these videos or somebody that was involved in making these videos. So I think that sort of speaks volumes of, I don't know, just how tight-knit this community is. It wasn't just me. There's definitely a team at Powerline. I did most of the shooting, but my partner Luke also did some shooting, and Mark Preston did all the post-production. I mean, if you add up the runtime, it's over an hour and a half for these historical videos. It's a feature film, basically. It took us 4 years maybe?
2017.
Oof. And yeah, shooting through a pandemic and stopping and starting as far as like having an event to launch them. It's been a challenge, and but it was a pleasure to put these together. And I also think it's great that an organization puts the value that Community Living St. Mary's did into telling their story, because a lot of organizations are just sort of looking to the future, and maybe they forget to look back. And Community Living certainly didn't forget to look back, as you're gonna find out as we watch these videos. So thanks.
So on that note, I'll say the more you know about the past, the better prepared you are for the future.
Everything changes because people get older. I was 18 when I started here. Now I'll be 70 in July, so things change, develop with friends and people and working and whatnot. In 1962, the Association for Mentally Retarded Children started, but the workshop itself didn't start till October 5th of 1964. Our workshop manager here at the time was Stan Trinklaw, and we worked from 9 till 3:30. It was a place to come and have some structure in my life. It was called the St. Marys and District Occupational Training Center. We had a contract with DeLong Scoville. We did salvage pins. We put pins on pins. We put pins on clips and a bunch of other stuff. I grew up here, so I've enjoyed town. Well, right now we're going down the street here to what was known at one time as the old post office. We got a green light. Buildings are the same, but the businesses aren't. Things evolve, so you can't stop progress. Oh, Barb.
Hello, Richard.
Well, right now I'm standing in front of the old St. Mary's post office. Our workshop manager here was Dorothy Nielsen. Workshop was expanding, doing all kinds of stuff. Then in 1967 we started up at the new James Fruity Center on Ingersoll Street.
Well, I was playing bridge with Jessie McKillop, who was instrumental in the Ontario Association being started. And she used to talk a lot about what went on here. And I thought that it was something that I could do that might help out a bit. Well, I volunteered in the workshop here and did whatever Al or Joan told me to do.
Well, we started in the basement doing the woodworking and whatnot. I made roosters and carts, donkeys and carts, picnic tables, chairs.
These are two of the products that were produced in James Produce Center when we were at this location. And they were made in approximately 1977. So they are 40 years old and they've stood the test of time, just like the three of us.
1975, Al Bennett was hired as a workshop manager here. It was good to work for Al because he had a lot of humor and he respected everybody he met.
Well, I just remember Al as being such a special person. He could look at an individual and he didn't see boundaries. He saw the abilities of people. People were coming from further out in the country and we were identifying needs of people.
Well, we definitely started to outgrow that place, so we began to think about how we might move, and the kinsmen were very supportive. They agreed to do the fundraising for us, and that was quite an amazing job to take on.
We had lots of support from local people. We had new markets, we had new products. We had lots of space to develop new things, and we started hiring more staff to make those things happen.
They sold the property that we were occupying here and donated that money to the new building.
We did various things here. We planted an asparagus garden. We built picnic tables here for years, and we made wooden toys. A lot of folks have spent a lot of time here. Boy, things have changed.
This used to be a loading dock.
Yes.
Listen, you can hear yourself in this room now. It used to be so noisy with all the woodworking equipment.
Richard reminded us that there was a dust collector outside for the woodworking equipment that was in here. And there was a paint room over in the far side for finishing. Yeah, so this was Terry, right, Joan?
Terry.
And yeah, she worked in the wood shop and she was hammering a leather tail on one of the toys. Yeah, so we worked with people like Terry to help them move into independence. We wanted to get people, instead of assembling something here, why not have them assembling it in the factory where other people were working so they could meet other people. It took us a while to get to that point. We did kind of a protected industry approach where we got fairly industrial with woodworking.
Okay, we're standing in front of the Tamac Mall. I'm not sure when it was built, but it's a short little strip mall that catered to commercial activities. It had a certain amount of space in it that was really quite useful for the wood shop because we were planning to expand and we needed more space for more machines, high-tech machines. We were taking on contracts that were related to furniture pieces that went into like Krug and Krahler furniture. We got rid of the picnic tables because it was a loss, and we concentrated on industrial production.
It was like we were, I don't know, stepping into an exciting new time. And people were given more credit and being brought back to the community and learning new skills, and there was a lot of training went on. We had an awful lot of fun.
In 1986, the focus in the contract room was changing, and we were looking into employment.
So in 1982, I came to be a student with Lori in the contract room, and what an experience that, the people who were moving home from institutions. And there was a growing acknowledgement that people with disabilities could be and were good workers, right? Good employees, and that it was right to be supporting people to get jobs in community.
A number of people that we supported were taught how to clean houses, so they were in people's homes, making relationships.
The cleaning program was a bridge to the community, so it was like that, taking people out of this building and putting them into jobs in the community. And it was fairly successful that way, I think. And then people started working at other employment in the town at various other locations through the supported employment program.
Well, there was some decision not to operate the wood shop anymore. I was part of that for different reasons. I was part of it because what I noticed is that people here actually were good workers. And I thought, well, if they're good workers here, they can be good workers anywhere. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's what we did. One person at a time, we found opportunities that they chose to do. Because how many people would actually choose to work in a shelter workshop? And the answer is, they haven't got a choice. We did what's called, I called back then, a paradigm shift. But really what it meant was stop focusing on the program and start focusing on the person.
Back years ago, I used to work for a fellow in Woodham by the name of Bernie McCormick, pumping gas, cleaning up the shop and whatnot. And he kept telling me, he says, I wish you had your driver's license. And I said, well, what for? He said, well, I'd send you for parts. My support worker took me over to Stratford and I got my driver's license. So when I got back to where I was working at the time, I got out of the car and told my boss, I said, I got my driver's license. He said, good, get in the truck and go to Saunders.
That fast.
That quick.
That quick. That's great. That's great.
The first ministry-funded residential programs in St. Mary's started in 1981, but there were things happening for people getting supports in their homes long before 1981. So these stories represent what can happen when a community comes together and figures out where someone needs some assistance and how they're going to provide it for them.
Father Gervais was speaking about community. They have a place in St. Mary's that they've been running as a novitiate. The place needs some attention and so on. Maybe that would be a good place for your people to go and start this idea of communal living. So he brought this up at a meeting at our house and we said, let's go up now and take a look. We called social services in London. A lady came out. She brought Jack Tabner out to us from London. Jack had some problems vocally and a little bit physically. We lived together without one person moving for 5 years. There are a lot of benefits in living in community other than saving money and getting to know one another much better and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, this place was where my brother Ken lived for a few years. Yeah, Ken liked his basement apartment. And this is where you went in to go into his apartment. Well, he was on his own and he liked it here and he had his own routine. Yeah, it was the volunteers and friends that helped Ken make the adjustment for living there by himself after our parents passed away.
The house behind us has 4 apartments in it, and 1 or 2 of those apartments over the years were rented to 2 of the people who got support through the Supported Independent Living program.
Well, that place there behind us was where I first moved from home. I had help from a support worker, my family moving in. After the first couple of weeks of being in my own apartment, I got myself a car, I got myself a girlfriend, and then the apartment and everything else.
People got support to do things like learn how to cook, learn how to house clean, learn how to do banking. All the things that we all have to learn when we move out of our family's home in the beginning. There were 9 people who got support from usually 2 to about 6 hours a week on average.
You were on all kinds of committees. You knew at some point we were going to want a residential service. Ministry of Community and Social Services announced there was going to be some residential funding coming out. They were going to pick a couple of projects from around our region, and it didn't necessarily look like we were going to get it. I think you brought all of your force to bear.
They told us we couldn't have an executive director because we weren't big enough.
Just a
and
workshop.
It was just a workshop. So we hired Bud anyway and just put it in our budget, and they just paid it, and we never heard anything more about it.
Didn't ask for permission.
No, we know better than anybody else what we need and what we don't need, and if we think we need that person to make it work for us, then it's important for the people that we're serving that they have the right structure there to help them. So Bud was it.
We were wanting to make apartments available for people, and I think the ministry thought the people that, that they wanted to see supported couldn't live in apartments, because we were talking about bringing people back from institutions and that kind of thing. When we went to the institutions as well, the social workers there would say, we don't have anybody here that could live in an apartment. And so we were going against the grain.
That was one of the things that we wanted to do, was serve people whose home was here or whose family were here.
I think one of the earlier places was Midwestern Regional Center. I remember going up there with Marilyn Haywood and asking the social workers who was from St. Mary's that were living there, and they wouldn't even tell us. And so I remember distracting the social worker, and they had all information about people on bulletin boards and things, and that's how we found the names of some people. We had to eventually put advertisements in our local newspaper. People came forward from nursing homes that let us know about people from their family, and when we'd find out about somebody, we would work with the family to kind of help figure out how to get the person back here. Remember Brian giving him his key to his apartment. The absolute pride that Brian and other people had. People in their own apartment had the opportunity to participate in making their meals and in laundry and all kinds of things like that, where in a larger setting in a group home, it's more difficult for people to do their normal daily kinds of activities. We were really growing in our understanding about the need for people to have relationships and be connected to their community. Marilyn Haywood, who was the residential manager here, was a leader in that philosophy, and that was about the same time where we were putting an end to some of the things that were segregated, like the sheltered workshop, and helping people get out and get jobs in the community, and just realizing that relationships were what this was all about.
When I was hired, well, I was still going to school, and I was hired to get to know a fellow who lived in St. Thomas at Start Center, Bill. And Bill and I were the same age, and I knew his family because our dads were friends. My job was to go and spend time with Bill and get to know him and to make a plan, because what we wanted to do was to support his family, to have him move back to town. Bill was a young guy. I think we were both like 21 or 22, something like that. But Bill had lived away from home from the time he was 6. And so the purpose was for me to get to know Bill, to develop a plan that would work for him so that he could move into this building. Eventually, they allowed me to take Bill out of the institution. Then we talked about having him come for visits, which he did do. He would come for 2 days at a time, so one overnight for the first while, and then eventually he moved. The spending time with Bill and helping his family have him move from the institution here was just so important. And in terms of the association, Bill was somebody who needed a lot of support, and people didn't believe that he should move from an institution. There were lots of people who didn't believe that. His family believed it, the people around here believed it, I believed it, the association obviously did, but Bill needed a lot of support, and people didn't think that people like Bill could live in community. And we proved them wrong, and we kept on proving them wrong, and we continue to prove them wrong. Bill eventually did get moved out, which was wonderful, and he had a very long, good life here in St. Marys.
It was all new for everybody, so that they were trusting us to give them the right information and to help them make the right decision. But they couldn't look at any other places to see how it had worked or anything. They were taking it as they got it from us, and so it was really faith that it would work out. We just always seemed to have had boards that really wanted to do the right thing, that were not afraid to be a little bit different.
Barb, you're, I think, the most determined person I've ever met. The board was led by Barb, and Helen Watson's, was our regional representative. She was providing support to this whole region, but this was where things were happening that she really was excited about. So we had resources of people like Helen and John and George that really focused here, because they were really excited. This stuff wasn't happening in every agency.
It's important to have staff and board and volunteers, and when we've had weekends away where we were going to have a learning experience, we've tried to have community members attend as well. And I can remember people saying to me, well, that if they don't work for you and they're not a volunteer for the association, why would you have them? It's because they're going to learn, and they may tell someone else, or they may decide themselves that they would like to help. And so it's, when you learn about something, you're much less likely to be negative about it. So the more people learned, the more positive they were.
I think we were able to really move our services to be attuned to the individual's needs, right from planning with the person and including other people, family members in the planning, identifying the resources attached to that person. When we moved from our budgets being a blanket program budget to individualizing those budgets in 1984, we found a 20% bump in our ability to provide more services at that time, because we were being more effective.
We are standing in front of a building, 155 Park Street, that Community Living purchased in 1983. When Community Living bought it, it really needed a lot of renovation. So I believe it was gutted, and they put 4 apartments in it for 4 people that were coming to live from Blue Water Center. Community Living had a building with 6 apartments, and they had done really well with that experiment or whatever, so they decided to do a second building with 4 more people from our community. 4 people from Blue Water came in December 1983, and this apartment building wasn't ready, so they moved into a house that Community Living bought at Church Street across from the bowling lanes. This is Linda Edwards. She came from Blue Water in '83, and she moved here. She had a roommate, and it left 1 apartment empty. Linda and her roommate did not get along very well. It wasn't anyone's fault, they just didn't mesh. So Linda moved upstairs into her own apartment. I remember Linda having her own morning support so that it was consistent with one staff, and she'd have her own evening support, the same all the time, so it would be the consistency.
At first, someone up at Blue Water said it wouldn't work, but it worked. She come back to St. Mary's, shared a room with Linda. Well, Anne was a lot closer to home. I could just go in and bring her out to the farm for an afternoon, or she'd come out for supper. And then they got the Park Street apartment, and then Anne went to the workshop every day. It was such a beautiful place for her to be, better than Church Street. You know what I mean? Because she had her own apartment. She had her own little kitchen, bathroom. She shared a room with Ethel, and she got along fine.
There were lots of people who had lots of needs for support. The association never said, that person's too difficult, too hard to support, we can't do that, we don't know how. Instead, they always said, let's get to know the person and let's figure this out. That's still happening today. People never turn people away based on how much support they might need or do need, but always try to figure out who is this person and how we're going to figure it out together.
I was the volunteer coordinator from 1981 to 1984. Volunteers made this place run. At least 2 people were here every day, helping make pies, teaching people life skills, and keeping people busy 9 to 5. A lot of people weren't very happy, didn't have enough to do on weekends and in the evenings. I wrote an article for the Journal Argus explaining that we just hired a volunteer coordinator, myself, and that we were looking to match people up. And I'm sure within a week I had 15 to 20 people, which I thought was overwhelming, and it was great. I didn't believe we'd get such a response. The volunteer coordinator program carried on until 1986, and after that, a group called Citizen Advocacy kind of took over, matching people up. Well, I met Marilyn before I was hired as the volunteer coordinator. For some reason, we just clicked. We're both loud and bossy. Marilyn makes me laugh. The gift that Marilyn gives to our family, it's just immeasurable.
I known Kathy, since I worked here up at the Purdue Center. We've been friends all along, and we're still friends. We're not breaking that off. because Kathy don't want to, so.
No. We were quite the twosome.
Yep.
We are quite the
Yep.
twosome.
Yeah, we are.
Al Bennett was the manager at the time. So it was a very small group. I think there were likely more volunteers than there were staff at that time, for sure. They made pies and tarts and all kinds of other things, but tuna casserole was my forte. I think we need to get back to having more people volunteer because it's good. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel as if you're contributing something, I think, to society. And I think it's important that people find their niche and get out there and volunteer.
It was community development, getting people who had a little bit of difficulty in getting linked into the community, which really wasn't about fixing the people who weren't connected, but about fixing the people who were, to accept everybody. Sitting right here is Shirley, who was matched fairly quickly with my daughter Sarah. And now, even though they live far apart, neither one forgets the other.
I've worked for community living since 1984, and I would have heard about citizen advocacy and thought, well, that might be an interesting volunteer activity or something to get involved with, and then would talk to someone like Al here.
I twisted his arm is what I did.
And it worked.
My involvement primarily was in the fundraising, and I was the treasurer for the whole time. Yeah. I did all the books by hand.
The association, for instance, has gone from having training to get people ready for employment and a whole lot of stuff like that to saying, look, the community here has got to find a place for everybody in the community. But that doesn't mean that the work of citizen advocacy can ever be done.
I became a volunteer actually in the school first because my kids were at school. But then I played bridge with the lady who was the original chair of this association and who helped to start the Ontario Association as well. And so I found it very interesting to see how many people there were that were working very hard to make sure that their kids could have a life the same as all the other kids.
You know, it goes back a long way, my experience and my time with community living in St. Mary's, probably back to when I was a child, and you know, I was fortunate enough to have a neighbor with developmental disabilities. I came to volunteer with community living on the Children's Services Committee. So it was kind of important that children's services were being met within the community, and clearly, I mean, it had been identified in the province that those services weren't being met all over the place. So, you know, there was a need for nursery school programs, and education was being looked at. Where was that going to go? And at that time, Bill 82 was being proposed, and which was going to finally oblige boards of education to educate all children within the province of Ontario, not just those children who came within the spectrum of what would seem at that time to be, you know, easily educated or normally educated.
In the early years, the Children's Services Committee was trying to find out the need for the town of St. Mary's as far as children being integrated into a nursery school program.
We're at the West Ward School at the west end of St. Mary's, which was, and until recently, was a daycare center for children in St. Mary's. And our son, Gregory, was the first child to attend here as an integrated childcare recipient. The program actually began in November '81. My son, Greg, began that program then. It was critical for Greg's well-being, and we also wanted Greg to be part of the community. So whatever program that was developed, we wanted Greg to be part of that, so he grew up with his peers.
Where do you want to go on a holiday, on a big holiday, Laura?
Italy.
Laura, did you like going to nursery school? Did you?
Yeah.
What do you remember?
Help.
What do you remember about it?
Help.
Help?
I remember playing with the other kids at nursery school. They included me to play.
I think it was important for the children. I think it was also important for the parent just to have a couple hours respite because it's a hard job with a special needs child. But I think it's equally as important for the community to realize that they're real people. And I think the younger we start that, the better it is.
Lily asked me to sit on the committee to get the mobility bus going so people with special needs could have transportation.
You know, it started out as a dream, and then when we realized that there was a possibility of getting funding to assist us, if we could come up with part of the money, it became more of a reality. The whole community was involved. I was the home support coordinator for home support services for St. Marys and area. So I looked after coordinating the programs such as Meals on Wheels, Wheels to Meals, friendly visiting, telephone reassurance, shopping bus, transportation services. Even with all of the volunteers that were incredibly wonderful, there was just not anything out there to assist people if they had mobility problems. That's where the mobility bus became so exciting because people were able to get out that couldn't get out before.
I go doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, medical clinics. I go to the Friendship Center on Tuesdays with my friend Bernice.
I think the work of our association will never be finished. I think you can always do better than you're doing, and you just have to look for those new ways of going about things, which is what we seem to be good at, so we just can't give that up. We have to keep trying to bring as many changes to this whole part of life as we can.
First panel that we have, and that would be Joan Lang and Kathy McCormick and Bud Carter. And please take your masks off while you speak, and I will just tell you I have this little 1-minute sign when you've got a minute left. But you won't need it. So we're going to start with Joan, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists if they would introduce themselves and tell you what years they were involved with Community Living St. Marys. So Joan, can you talk about your role at the workshop on Ingersoll Street, what it was like to be there in the 1970s?
Yes, my name is Joan Lang, and I was working with James Purdue Center and with St. Mary's Community Living from 1975 to 1997. Thinking back to 1975, James Purdue Adult Workshop and Training Center was located in a small house in a residential neighborhood in St. Mary's. This is kind of echoing what you saw in the film. It was relatively new, donated by the Kingsman Club of St. Mary's, and so named in memory of James Purdue, one of their members who was very active in initiating the project and who had recently died. Institutions were closing. People who had finished school in Stratford, as well as adults who had been sitting at home or trying to find a niche in the work world, now had a place to go. A van was purchased to enable those in rural areas to attend. A young teacher, Al Bennett, was hired. Al had the innate ability to see an individual's talents and strengths. He was also very adept at knowing what aids and supports could best help each person to accomplish their desired goals. Al was supervisor, mentor, bus driver, file clerk, emergency medical officer when needed, organizer, fundraiser, and grant procurer. And most of all, a friend and confidant to all. As it became evident one person could not be all things to all people, I was hired as a file clerk, which really meant I was a file clerk, a typist, a phone answerer, assistant supervisor, and friend. Activities at the workshop included a woodworking program to help those interested in learning to saw, sand, and finish. This was held mostly in the summer months as space was very limited, and products included large objects like picnic tables, lawn chairs, stools, and cutting boards. But it grew into a more varied line as the association was able to hire other staff through various work initiatives. The one most will remember was a line of wooden animal puzzles. Training and support also included life skills, such as the basics of making tea and coffee and simple soup. That took care of break times and lunches, with each person having a chance to learn preparation and serving of meals to their coworkers, and that helped them become more independent in their own lives. A printing program offering tickets, programs, etc. to local groups and businesses in the community allowed each to run the Gestetner, something most of you won't know what I'm talking about, and to cut and collate. A local business, DeLong Scoville, which manufactured needles and different sewing aids, rounded out the training programs. Several hundreds of thousands of pins, buttons, snaps, etc. were counted and packaged over the years, always with a great deal of pride. In order to offer such a varied program, there was a team of dedicated volunteers, usually one for each half day of the work week, who took over the supervision of tasks and assistance with support and training. Some were able to take part in a swimming program as a local resident with a pool offered it to the workshop for half a day each week, very ably supervised by a volunteer. The atmosphere was great. A place to go to work was the dream of most of these people at the time. It sounds segregated and isolating, and it was, but it was merely step one to much bigger and better things, a place which enabled the community and all to realize the value of all its citizens and the gifts each brought.
Thank you, Joan. Kathy, you were one of the volunteers who started at the brand new James Purdue Center on Elgin Street. Can you tell us what that was like for you and some of your experiences there?
Yes, I had worked previously at Hutton House in London and was raising a small family at the time. I happened to see an ad in the St. Mary's Journal Argus that they were looking for volunteers for a brand new workshop that had opened, and I thought, that sounds interesting. I'm not sure who hired me, if it was Joan, I can't remember, but I was hired to work in the kitchen. We prepared once a week casseroles or something for lunch, and then everybody that was at the workshop then was able to have a hot meal on that day. It also helped people learn some cooking skills, reading of recipes, the fun job of doing dishes afterwards. And it was a small kind of family atmosphere. I think everyone enjoyed their time there. And as things changed, and Bud will talk about this a little bit more, more people became involved. But at the very beginning, it was, I think, maybe 14 people that were coming to the workshop. Again, it was giving them a place to go, something to do, and I made lifelong friendships. And after I finished volunteering, Bud, I think, convinced me to sit on the board. And then in 1984, I was actually hired as a support worker. So my time with community living in St. Mary's goes from 1978 until I retired in 2000. So I've seen a lot of changes. But back then, it was small. It was more of a family-oriented group. And I will say, seeing Richard on there, and he mentions my husband because he did work at the gas station that we had in Woodham, and I think that I might have had a little bit to do with helping Richard to get that position.
Thank you, Kathy, and I'm pretty sure you had a bit to do with helping Richard get that position. Bud, you arrived in what could be called the next chapter. I stole that from CBC, by the way. Can you tell us about some of the new things, some things you saw and learned, and really tell us what it was like to be part of that whole new era?
Yeah, just start. It's a real honor to be here, I gotta say, and seeing so many people. Seeing so many people that it's an honor to be here. So many people that either have been supported by the association or volunteers or employees. And I started in 1979 as an employee of the association as workshop manager, and worked for a while at that. And you saw in the film that eventually I was promoted to executive director, the first executive director of the association at the time. We didn't have one prior. And I worked until 87. So I was here for a while. But I grew up in town, and I grew up with Shelley and Richard, and Art Bennett was older than me. But people that many of the people that we supported were people that just were part of the landscape, part of the town. But when I was in school, they would go in a different door at the school into an opportunity class. And were segregated with all the best intentions of trying to help people that had special needs. But really, I learned so much from being here and from being around people that I was supposed to be teaching things. I was learning things unbelievably. And one of the big things was how hurtful it is to the core of a human being to be told that they're different. Many of the people, the families of people that we supported, when they were born as a child, doctors would say this person's not going to live that long, or they should be put in a special institution. And many of the people that we brought back home to St. Mary's had just incredible hurts in their life. And what I learned was the resilience that people have to just all that hurtful stuff, and just like any of the rest of us, want to live a good life. And I think we put a lot of work into. I worked a bit as a carpenter when I was between years in school and university and that kind of thing. I learned to measure twice, cut once. And we did a lot of navel gazing with Community Living St. Mary's, and really thinking deeply about what it means to be a citizen, and I just, the whole community has been part of this, and I want to acknowledge, in addition to the, all the great workers that were colleagues that I worked with, the volunteers, Barbara Taylor, the Slaters, Alan Bev. I don't want to miss people here, but William Hanley, just people, the McLeans, just people that have been part of this community that have given given their support, and those people were all examples of connecting as friends to individuals who have special needs and their families, and showing the rest of the community the way to be inclusive. And it's all about a good life, and that's what anybody wants. Quality of life is the same recipe for me as it is for anybody else, and I think that it certainly has been wonderful seeing Community Living St. Mary's continue the core values of having an inclusive community. It's been an example for all kinds of other communities, and for all kinds of citizens who are all learning how to be, good citizens. And that is about being friends, neighbors, employers, and whatnot of everybody. That's really all I got to say. Thanks.
I love that Bud used the word whatnot. That was Richard Oliver's favorite phrase, and you heard it a couple of times, I think, in the film. We always smiled when he said that. So, Bud, that's perfect, and thank you. So our panel time is finished, and I'm not quite sure what's next, Marg. Okay. A short break, she says. So let's get up and stretch and come back to that corner. I think there are some treats back there, maybe.
So I was teaching piano lessons the whole time that Mackenzie was living with us. And that's when my children really got close to Mackenzie too, because when I was in with a lesson, they would be looking after Mackenzie, and he would be hearing the lessons as well. So all the kids, Tom, Kathy, and
call us because we're like literally backyards cutting through sort of thing. So
took a lot of pressure off us. All of his workers
There we go, everybody. I'd just like to mention that we're going to have a little change in schedule this afternoon. And before we do that, I just want to say, weren't those films beautiful that you already saw? Like, they were so beautiful. So thank you. And thank you to the panel members who were here already this afternoon. It was so great to see Joan and Kathy and Bud together again like that. So our change in schedule today is that we're going to have the panel schedule first before the next film. And this is a little bit of a change, but I think we're really looking forward to hearing from the three people on the panel today, and that's Max Scheer and Rebecca Scheer and Alan Slater. And of course, our facilitator for this is Stephanie Lee. So I would welcome the four of you up here to take a seat. Thanks.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be here, and I feel really, really lucky to be up here with three very important people who graciously agreed to be on the panel with us. And so it's exciting to ask these questions, and some of our questions and answers will make a lot of sense after seeing the video that follows. But I'd like to start with Max, if that's okay, Max.
Hey.
Excellent. Good. So Max, in the film that we're going to watch, you talk about work and your different work experiences. And what I want to know is why work is so important to you.
So I can earn enough money and buy my own car someday.
Isn't that true for all of us? Awesome. What else is so great about having a job?
I can meet a lot of different friends and be a very kind person.
Excellent. That's awesome. What else do you like about work?
I like to change tires and change oil.
That's cool. Where did you do that?
At GMC.
Is that in St. Mary's?
It sure is.
Awesome. Yeah. Good. So Max, for those people maybe here who don't know, you have your own business. What's it called?
I sure do. It's called Honey Be Good.
Ooh. And tell us a little bit about your business, Honey Be Good.
So I have my own bees, and I have how many hives do I have? How many did you register? 600? 60. So I have 60 hives, so I got a lot of beehives.
That is a lot of beehives. A little while ago, Max, you told me how many beehives you have, but then you told me how many beehives you would like.
Our number one goal is to get up to 100.
Awesome.
It is true.
Max, when did you first learn about bees?
So me and my friend Taylor went out to clover meet one year, and I said, "Mom, can I get my own bees?" And she said, "No, Max, you gotta do research." So I did it for a whole year, and then Dad thought about, Max, let's get some bees.
Max, do you remember how long ago that happened?
That was since 2018.
That's awesome. And now you have your own business, Honey Be Good.
I do.
And where can people find out about Honey Be Good?
On Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Very cool. So do you think it would be okay if we asked your mom some questions?
Yes.
Awesome.
And I try not to interrupt. You can take over.
So Rebecca, obviously you're Max's mom.
I am.
And in the film, you talk about employment and supporting Max, but we know that there's so many things to prioritize as Max's mom. Why do you focus on employment?
I think probably because, like anybody else in our community, whether we have a disability or not, our job, most of the time, 80% of the time, is our purpose in life. And whether it's a job like you have, like I have, where I actually work outside of the home in my first job, and then I come home and I do my other job, that's not paid. Yeah. So that's purpose in life. And if you don't have a purpose in your life, then there is a quality that starts to diminish drastically. And it's not just about people with disabilities. It's about the fact that if each and every one of you were to look at your life and take your job or your volunteer position or, you know, your hobbies, and you take that out of your life, if you were to turn around and just kind of look at that and go, well, what else is there? It would be a hollow existence. There would be nothing there. There would be just the outskirts of something that could have been and would be great. So I think that's why I'm very, very proactive in regards to all of my children having jobs because I love them, but they're going to leave. Because I'm going to quit my second job pretty darn soon. No. But it's very important, I think, in just for humankind. And then when you add somebody with a disability, I think it's really important that you have to understand that it's not their disability, it's their ability. And each and every one of them has an ability. All of us have an ability to do something and contribute to the community that you're in. And that's why leading up to community living and Max being part of this community is very, very important. Not only to him, but also to myself, my husband, and Max's sisters, because Max having a fulfilled life means that we could have a bit of a life of our own.
Excellent, thank you. So, you know, you just highlighted having a job is so important, and from knowing Max, he has more than one job. So why more than one job, and was that easy?
It's kind of funny because when Steph called us up the first time to ask if we wanted support with Max one summer, of course I didn't know who she was, and I think that was probably, I look back now and I think that's maybe one of the most disheartening things, that I didn't know St.Marys Community Living existed. And that to this day bothers me because there has got to be, if I didn't know about them, then there's got to be 100 other families that doesn't know about community living. And when Steph offered to provide help or support for Max one summer, my answer was, what organ do you need? How much blood do I have to give? Because you can have it all. Mm-hmm. And she said, no, just say yes and we'll fill out all the forms. That alone was worth, a couple of pints of blood that I didn't have to fill out any more forms. But I think that having Max busy is really, really important. And I think everybody has downtime and deserves to have downtime. But again, if you look at your life as a normal individual, you are happier if you are productive and you're busy and you have things to look forward to and you have things to occupy your time. It's no different for Max or anyone else. Max is the best he can be when he is busy. And he has his downtime. He loves YouTube. But it's very important to keep Max busy because we want him to be the best he can be, and he is a very, very good person. And when he did his core gift, his core gift was that he was a good friend and that he could be a good friend to those who don't have friends. So again, he's not going to form those relationships if we don't keep him busy and in the community. So he does. He has like 3 jobs.
Excellent.
My 11-year-old is looking, if anybody is looking for anything you've got. I can farm her out too.
Excellent. And Max mentioned his business, Honey Be Good, and I know that the name of that business isn't by accident. Would you like to share about it?
Yeah, actually, we were discussing Max and his honeybees, which started out with 2 hives and then went to 8 and 16 and 32, and now we're at 60, and we're not getting any bigger. I don't know who you've
one day.
You've been talking to your father. You know Mom knows best. Stop it.
Well, Dad says maybe.
No.
Dad's the boss.
No, Dad is not the boss. Dad's going to live in the honey house.
Yeah, when I watch YouTube all day, he says, Bugs, come help. And I just say, I'm watching YouTube.
Yes, that's great. That's Max's downtime. So Honey Be Good became because we obviously had honeybees and we didn't know what to do with the honey that they were producing. And one of the things that Max strives for, and basically the one thing that we ask of Max, is just be good. That's all you have to do, is you just have to be good. Do his very best, but if you just ask somebody to be good and do everything in their power to be kind, I mean, my mom said to me, out of all of your children, Max is going to be the happiest. And when you hear that from your mom during some really, really bad years, you kind of second guess her. But now I know that he will be the happiest out of my 3 children, because he just needs to strive to be good. And he meets all of our expectations. Everybody has bad days. Sometimes Max has more than others. But he's working on it, and he is being good. So Honey Be Good was born. And he is in several local stores, and he has an incredible fan base. There's over 1,000 people that follow him on Instagram and Facebook, and he's had so much support, and it's fantastic to see. And I love that people come out, and I mean, his honey is really exceptional. But I think that most of the time people follow Max and contribute to Max's business because he's a good person and they like to have a relationship with him.
Excellent, thank you. Max, beside you, you have Al. What do you think if we ask Al some questions?
So, do you want to ask some questions there, Al?
Well, I might ask Al the questions if that's okay.
I don't know that I have any answers, but I do know when I was asked to be on a panel, I said no until they told me that Max was going to be on the panel with me. And who would you want to be on a panel with more than Max?
Excellent. So Al's been a volunteer and part of our association for so many years. Al, what are a couple memorable moments?
Well, I looked at that question last night when it first showed up on my email. And the first thing that popped to mind may well seem to have nothing whatever to do with this association, but I remember a moment in Exeter United Church, October of 1974. Somebody got up after I was making a presentation and asked me, where do people with handicaps live in Zambia? Now, probably a lot of people don't know that my family and I spent 4 years working in Central Africa, Zambia, on a 12,000-acre plot of land, working with small emergent farmers there. And so I was used to having questions about agriculture in Zambia, but I was not very used to being asked, where do people with handicaps live in Zambia? I had to think a little bit. But then I remembered that we had a 2-mile-long lane, and on a fairly regular basis, every time we went out, somebody or other would put a big pile of thorn trees in our lane, so we would have to get out and move them before we could get back to the house. And you had to move them because if you drove over thorns, you were soon going to be fixing tires. So this went on a fairly regular basis until I finally asked somebody, and he was a person from the community that just laughed and said, oh, that's Kenyatta. I don't know whether that was what his name was, but that's what he called himself. And he was a person that was a little bit different. And the people in the community all respected his differences and just let me know that whatever he was doing was just okay, don't worry about it. He was living at home. So when I was asked that question in October of 1974, after having thought a minute or two, that it was a very strange question, I had that answer. They live at home, wherever home might be. But it's quite obvious that in a country that was struggling in the immediate after effects of colonialization, that there were no group homes or there were no institutions, so people lived at home. That's the answer I gave him. And I guess it was an okay answer. He didn't say it wasn't.
Thank you, Al. So we've been watching films about the association's history today. I'm wondering if you can share some of your thoughts about the association's future.
Well, I'm still stuck on the same topic. I think it's one of the reasons I became interested in the association in the first place, because people were coming back to St. Mary's from institutions to live in their own homes. That doesn't mean necessarily in home with their parents, but in their homes. And I think I'm not saying that's the whole future of the association, but a big part of the future of this association is still finding people homes, finding homes that are accessible, barrier-free, affordable, and most of all, integrated. Thanks again, Max, for being on this panel with me. That's all I've got to say, but I'll leave you more time if you like.
You're welcome, anytime.
Well, thank you, Al, and thank you, Max, and thank you, Rebecca, so much for being on our panel and sharing your thoughts today. It's so important to hear from people, and I think maybe we can move on and see our next film.
If I could, I want to really express our gratitude to St. Mary's Community Living, because I always felt like I was the only one in the room that was fighting for Max, and I truly believe that he was going to be out in the community and have a quality life just like everybody else. And I honestly was the only one in the room that thought that. I had family and friends that, of course, supported me in whatever I wanted to do and any drive I had, but it was me that just thought I was the only one that thought I could do this. And then community living came to our lives, and all of a sudden there is a whole community of people that are looking at me like, yeah, this isn't new, Rebecca. And I was just like, darn it, I am so glad to find you people. Because it's really nice not to have to fight the fight all by yourself. And I really appreciate you people. And the history of the community living is just phenomenal. When Richard said he moved out and bought a car and got a girlfriend, that is not happening. You're moving out, but there is not going to be a girlfriend.
What about a car?
Maybe a tractor.
Maybe something with 4 wheels that has a motor and doesn't go too fast, like 20 miles an hour.
Yes, maybe. Okay.
Well,
Thanks, Steph.
Thank you, Rebecca, and we're happy to have found you guys too. So we'll move on with the videos.
I'm Pam Robson. My brother Bill Grantham moved to St. Mary's in 1983. Prior to that, he had been supported in a number of institutions. We had been told that his needs could not be met in his home community, that it just would not be possible. I met Marilyn Haywood and Marg McLean, and they said, yes, by all means, his needs can be met in our community. So we began working towards having my brother move back to St. Mary's, to his own apartment. Living in St. Mary's was really great for Bill. He could spend more time attending family gatherings. He hosted parties on his patio, which had a lovely view of the Thames River. The people at St. Mary's Community Living really provided for Bill a quality of life that he would never have had anywhere else.
I remember Barb Taylor and I going to workshops with John Boyce, and we could see from those workshops that we needed to make some changes. And so the board made a decision to have closed down the various segregated programs that we had and to integrate the housing situations as well. The plan that would be developed with individual budgets for each person would be implemented by April 1990.
But we were trying to start with no barriers. We're trying to start from scratch. What did this person require without making compromises? So we met with families and friends of individuals. There was a lot of fear, including on our part, that we could pull it off.
At that time, I was working in the activity program, and it was closing. And I do remember that there was 3 other staff working with me when that announcement came along. It was like, what are we going to do? The workshop there, where people had been working for 20 years, was going to no longer be there. We took a look at where we were getting some of the work from.
I remember Linda Hutchigo, she asked me if I would want to work at Richardson Foods, and I did work there.
So Richardson Foods, Marilyn, was one of the contracts that we had in the contract room.
Yeah, this was the contract room, but it was different kinds of salad things that you put on salads, like blue cheese and stuff like that.
So when you went up the road here and you went to the factory, were you working on a line?
Yes, I was working on the line, and then I had my line because I had all my little things all in order when I want to put them through. I still kept up with all the boxes going through.
Community Living St. Mary's and area have been helping people find full and part-time employment in the community throughout the 80s, long before the sheltered workshop officially closed in 1995. In fact, in the 70s, the workshop temporarily closed when every person found work in a factory in Stratford. But the need for work increased when the James Purdue Centre finally closed its doors. The community continued to step up. By 1995, most people had found part-time jobs and a few found full-time work. Understanding the important role that employment has in people's lives, Community Living St. Mary's and other Perth County groups came together to form an employment organization that would support people with developmental disabilities to find and keep jobs. That was the beginning of Partners in Employment, incorporated in 1992, offering services in 1994.
I said I would chair the employment group. We gathered all the people that were interested in that, so that included all the people from Community Livings, from St. Mary's, Stratford, and Listowel. They sat at the table. We started with the question, if we could start an employment service for people with barriers, what should it look like? And that was the key thing that drove us. And we decided that what existed was really not in the best interests of the people we were trying to serve. We felt that the services that existed were always telling people what was good for them. People with special needs were often treated in the workplace not with the greatest of respect. We want a frontline, professional service for people to walk through the door and feel like they are important and that we have their best interests at heart.
So we were working a lot with the people that were in the sheltered workshop because the Community Living St. Mary's had decided that the workshop was going to close and people were going to have inclusive opportunities within their community. We did planning one person at a time, and we realized that there were not a lot of supports for persons that we were supporting for employment opportunities in the community. So as an organization, Community Living very much supported moving towards the direction of having a more integrated employment service for persons with disabilities and all persons in general. Everyone that walks through our door, no matter who they are,
when you come in the door, you go through the same process. And we could have never, ever done that if it wasn't for the foresight of a couple community livings.
I'm Kelly Boudreau, and I'm the employment facilitator with Community Living St. Marys and area. And my role is to assist people with disabilities in finding employment that caters to their needs.
Lexi is wonderful. Her laugh is infectious. She is so good that I've actually asked to keep her on past the summer.
I'm at GMC today. I used to work here part-time in the summer. I used to polish this truck right here.
Do you like to have a job, or do you like to stay in bed and do nothing?
I like to have a job.
Why?
It's fun. You get paid and I can spend it on VHS tapes.
Oh.
So the summer program was set up in such a way that it's 9 weeks of paid employment for people who are high school so that they could develop skills and abilities for future goals.
I love the relationship that I've built. I look forward to seeing him every time he comes in. The great big smile when he walks through the door. I wish we could have him more, and I look forward to having him more in the future. So it's a great experience for myself and hopefully for Max.
This was Max's first real opportunity to be out in the community and working. He's happy when he finds purpose in his life.
As Max gets older, I know he's interested in taking shop class right now. You know, is there something there that we can help him grow that experience and that skill? And so for us, what we learned really was that there's a lot more that we can probably still give, and we have every intention of doing so.
I'm here at St. Marys Deep CBI. I've been out of high school 7 years, and it's good to be back here.
So first of all, we came in into the schools every once a week for I think like a 6 or 7 week period of time, like for probably about an hour and a bit. And each week we would talk about a specific topic. So respect, trust, advocacy.
I tend to voice this. So I've been doing Special Olympics for 14 years, and I teach new kids how to speak up. If you win a game or lose a game, it does not matter. Just have fun.
Definitely. Have fun and treat people with respect.
Yeah.
And like you said, so with your Special Olympics, you're being like a bit of a mentor for people, and helping them stand up for themselves.
Voices was a brainchild of a few people who just really believed in paying some attention to people having their own voice. And, you know, I just remember at the time, it wasn't about people having their own voice in order to advocate for big things. It was to have your own voice for your own life, you know. So it was about everything from, you know, having a voice, using it for employment, for, you know, what you want in life, relationships, that sort of stuff. We wrote the curriculum together, and lots of hours, lots of paper, lots of just brainstorming and asking people what they thought was important.
And we were dealing with people with very diverse needs, and we needed to sometimes take the extra time in helping people to figure out exactly what it is that they wanted.
I mean, really, what are we in this for? It's to ensure that people have self-determination and are directing their own lives, telling us how to support them. And to do that, you need a voice. The thing that excited me and us was when we saw people really, you know, after a session or two, really grab hold of their voice. The curriculum was over 6 or 8 weeks.
Yep.
You know, starting gently and then, you know, hopefully ending with a roar.
Voices Perth is a collaborative project between Community Living St. Marys and area, Community Living Stratford, Community Living North Perth, and Family Services Perth Huron. As the Voices Coordinator, my role is to connect with our local high schools in Perth County and set up times that will work for us to come in and provide leadership opportunity workshops to youth who have a developmental disability and some who do not in local high schools.
I got involved in Voices mostly for learning about others and friendship and learning about what I could do towards other people's lives and stuff. Growing up as a kid with a disability, I found that in schools they not really taught me as much, but they tried to pass me for the grades because they wouldn't want to kind of deal with somebody who had a learning ability every year. I like wolves, you can see by the tattoos, and I'm very good. I like a lot of the mythological dark animals and mythology. I have one friend in St.Marys, hopefully going to get more, but I've been best friends with him for quite a few years now. I met him through the program. It's very good in your life and it will help you figure out where you want to be in life and who you want to be.
We always need to continue this work.
Yeah, and we need, supportive decision making is really critical because there are many people who don't use language in traditional ways or who would, be seen as not being able to direct their own support, and we need to figure out good ways to support people around this as well. Mm-hmm. One way, for sure, is to help people identify what they need and want and what their goals and dreams are. And that was a new concept to lots of people we worked with. Mm-hmm. So that was exciting.
It was.
So in 2003, I saw an opportunity with the Community Living St. Marys and area. They were looking for a coordinator with a project called It Takes a Village. And the idea was that person would be working specifically in the high school to develop and help the school community around making sure that everyone felt included and a part of life, that everyone belonged. The project was a partnership with the high school and the youth center, community living, and some other members of the community, including parents and students. Helping a community develop those connections so that all parts of it are feeling included and involved has to happen at many levels.
So I was a student at DCVI in grade 11, so I think that was 2003. I was involved in the student council, and there was an opportunity presented to participate in some leadership training, which I thought was really interesting, and so I filled out an application, which we found, which is kind of funny to see that, from so long ago.
So It Takes a Village was trying to build bridges, not just between students with developmental disabilities, but between any student who was feeling marginalized for whatever reason. Its goal was to help the school community at St. Marys DCVI to become more welcoming and to foster a better sense of belonging in the school community. And the project looked at all the people involved in that, so staff, parents, and students. And so different components of the project, like leadership development and the theater project, and even just some of the connecting with people one-on-one, was about drawing attention to the value of belonging in a community.
So now that we're kind of talking about it and I think back on it, that was one of the first times that I thought about myself, I think, as a leader and what that would look like. And I'm sure that planted some seeds for me about what I wanted and the kinds of things that I wanted to do in my work and in my life. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of reflect on that and notice how that might have sort of laid that foundation for some of the things that I do now. And
the interesting thing about investing in people, which is what we were doing, taking this opportunity to invest in people, is that they begin to recognize that they have gifts and that they have things that they can contribute. And even in small ways, that builds people's confidence and certainty. And you know, it opens doors when you think, if I am recognized and my gifts are recognized, then maybe I can appreciate others as well.
So for the last 15 years, St. Mary's and Area Community Living has been presenting the scholarship at the commencement exercises at St. Mary's District Collegiate to a deserving student who is entering the field of working with young folk with challenges and disabilities.
It was an honor to receive that award and to be given that through Community Living for my to continue my studies at Western. Now, after my 4 years at Western, I've kind of decided that I want to take the education route, and so I'm going to Teachers College next year. And so the plan is to kind of get in with programming and policies for students with disabilities.
I think it's really important for any organization to give back to the community. Like Community Living looks for and enjoys wonderful support from this community, and this is one small way that we can give back to it. I think it's very important that we are there in the community and that we are able to encourage young people to be participants in the community as well.
In 1996, our board was approached by somebody who was interested in providing some summer support to some young people, 6 to 8 young people who live in the town of St. Mary's. And of course, they were very supportive of that. And from there, they started providing supports one-on-one for young people to go out, do some leisure activities, go to community events, and attend our local Kids Club day camp. Kids were supported one-on-one with a worker to attend Kids Club day camp. Eventually, that changed a little bit over the years, where we were able to provide some training and some support to the town staff, so they were able to provide support to young people. When I began my role, there were a number of young people who were too old to attend camp and getting into their teen years, and we started to focus on what would their summer look like outside of a camp experience, and starting to look more into volunteering and employment, as well as recreational activities, building skills, having new experiences, meeting up with friends.
I'm Jocelyn Cruz. I was a summer support worker this year. What I got out of this summer job was some really great experience and connections with the people I was working with. It also helped me with my future career goals, figuring out what I want to do and how I'd be working with people. This job definitely gave me some very good communication skills and learning how to work with people in a professional way where I could support them.
Community Living St. Mary's and Area has supported local youth to attend Community Living Ontario's Reaction for Inclusion conferences for nearly a decade. In the more recent years, a group of youth have committed their time and efforts to bring forth ideas about inclusion as a social justice movement on a local level. Please welcome them to share their own stories.
So you might be wondering what Reaction for Inclusion is about. So Reaction for Inclusion seeks to empower youth to take action individually and collectively to make our schools and communities more inclusive spaces. Led by a youth advisory committee, this movement seeks to change the Canadian narrative of disability and to help communities embrace young adults as community leaders and stakeholders. We support youth to facilitate conversations that will reframe the current understanding of community and that will help us build neighborhoods where all youth can thrive.
Well, one thing that stands out for me the most is definitely the people. They're amazing, their spirit, it's everything.
You don't like seeing people being left out for the way they look or the way they act or how they were born.
So Include to Improve hosted a book tour with Michael Jacques. He is a self-published author of Can't Read, Can't Write, Here's My Book. Youth members and Michael visited 5 Perth County schools in 2 days, speaking to approximately 820 students, 45 teachers, and support staff.
United Way was kind enough to give our group a grant, and we used that money to hire Michael to go on the book tour. Yeah, it was really nice. So, Michael.
So hi, my name is Michael. I live in the Niagara region, and I wrote a book, Can't Read, Can't Write, Here's My Book. It's online on Apple Bookstore. You can get it on here'smybook.com. You can follow me on the social media and stuff as well. It's a really inspiration book. I'm self-published because I can't read or write. I just think it was really cool just to do it to show anything's possible. They're my friends, so it's really good. I was very excited to meet them and go to their hometowns and go to their schools. I was very pumped just to see where they go to schools and stuff. So I was very excited when I got a chance to do that. I don't really do it for myself. I do it for everybody as possible to show that just because it might be harder for some things doesn't really matter. You can still focus on your strengths and your abilities, and I just think it's really good to show that message. And if I have to be the face of doing it, then I'm the face of doing it.
So the year 2000, community living started to support children, so it was lucky for us.
They would come in maybe 7 in the morning till maybe 3:30 in the afternoon, or 2:30 in the afternoon, or till 11.
They were doing everything from helping to get him ready for school, but for the most part it was more in the evenings, because that was the time that we needed a bit of relief. He has multiple disabilities, but he's got a lot of special abilities too. Mackenzie is wonderful at keeping Jim and I entertained and very happy. He has been the most wonderful kid you could imagine, just with his smile. He just lights up a room for everybody.
And they also told us too that right at the start, he wouldn't walk, he wouldn't talk, couldn't go to school. He does all those things.
Mackenzie was 6 years old, I believe, and we tried something out called a respite family to give us a break, and we found the most wonderful family here in town. It was Tim and Arden Van Oosterhout. Arden Van Oosterhout has been an amazing person. She's the most wonderful person.
Woo woo, here we go.
Arden is Mackenzie's favorite second mother.
We met Mackenzie because our son Tom was working for Community Living as a student, and he worked, he worked morning shift, and then he would work every third week. He would work the afternoon shift when Jim was at work, and Tom used to just bring him over to our house for pretty much the whole shift, and he would just hang out with us, and we got to know him quite well. And we talked, probably for 6 months, tossed the idea around, and we finally came to a decision that we would love to have Mackenzie come and stay with us and be his respite family. Well, he would come to stay at our place from Sunday afternoon, and he would stay at our house until the following Saturday. So he would go to school from our place and come home and just be part of our family. Mackenzie was very easy to be around and to look after. He was small. Mackenzie was small and very portable. We used to just throw him over our shoulders like a sack of potatoes. Kathy in particular got really good at just carrying him around. And yeah, we used to do all kinds of things, right? We used to get you out in your pony. Mackenzie would run up and down the driveway in the pony. We used to try to get out for a big walk every day. He'd listen to piano. He'd play piano. And he really enjoyed playing piano, didn't you? He would sit, I'd be making supper, and Mackenzie would sit in front of the piano probably for 45 minutes, and you could hear him working away. I was a piano teacher for a number of years, and I could recognize that Mackenzie had an ear for music. He definitely had an ear for music. And Kathy plays the piano, and between the two of us, we have completely brainwashed him into loving Elton John and Billy Joel. So this program called Share Your Home had been offered in the community before by Community Living, but Mackenzie's situation was the first time it was offered to a child. Okay, buddy, I'm going to play part of this song. I don't know if we'll go through the whole thing or not. I haven't played it for a long time, but he used to really like this one. So I was teaching piano lessons the whole time that Mackenzie was living with us, and that's when my children really got close to Mackenzie too, because when I was in with a lesson, they would be looking after Mackenzie, and he would be hearing the lessons as well. So all the kids, Tom, Kathy, and Mackenzie, would hear these songs. And yeah, and I used to have recitals, and Mackenzie would come to the recitals, and he'd listen to all the songs and everything. And you could just tell, observing him, that he was feeling it, he was enjoying it, and there would be certain music types that he would like more than others. Oh, he's become part of our life. He's part of our family.
When Mackenzie graduated in the end of June 2017, he actually moved out July 1st. We're really happy that we're able to have him home every other weekend, and if there's ever any problems, they can always call us because we're like literally backyards cutting through sort of thing. So
Took a lot of pressure off us. All of his workers, we accepted them all, and they've been great, each and every one of them.
it's made a huge difference because this apartment that he is in it's actually sponsored through Community Living. So he's a very fortunate young man to be there. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Community Living came through for us big time.
Is Kim coming?
I first became involved with Thomas in 2002, 2003. I was a new team leader to Community Living St.Marys area, and I was the first team leader involved with Thomas. And so we came out and we met, and from there, with Brenda and Harold, and of course with Thomas, we built a team of people around him that spent time with him after school. From like 3 till 6, we used to spend time together.
You remember the St. Mary's Fair at Arena?
The CMHA fair?
St. Mary's Fair.
Oh, you and your fairs. I do remember the fairs. They don't have it anymore though, do they?
Why don't they?
I don't know that. You should find that out. So I used to spend I had direct time that I spent with Thomas, and that was every Wednesday. So Thomas and I would I'd pick him up at school in Stratford, and we would hang out till 6 o'clock at night. I would do a big introducing. I'd do this big, ladies and gentlemen, in the city of Stratford today is introducing the comedian Thomas Holland. And
I know
take
joke.
it away, and he would tell jokes.
Where the Bears going with Ellen the Bears? Hey, Bears Canada.
Ah, ha, ha.
Is that it?
When Thomas was 9 years old, I heard about a meeting in St. Mary's that was bringing different agencies together, and I thought it would be worth checking it out. We were with Family Services for supports at that point. And when the meeting was coming to an end, I heard Community Living St. Mary's representatives say, we're really struggling with hearing about these young people the last day of high school. I thought, I'm calling Community Living St. Mary's. They need to know about Thomas. They assisted us with Kids Club, which I believe was at the United Church in St. Mary's, as well as at Downey Central Elementary School. They arranged a circle of friends so that Thomas had a peer group of support, and it helped with safety and fun, and yeah, it was a good thing. It was a great start. I was not aware that they weren't supporting children at the time of that meeting, but it apparently came to pass in 2000, and the board approved supporting younger than 18, and it was full speed ahead from there. Now he lives in his own house. His supportive neighbor rents the back half, and Thomas does live by himself. He does have independent time. He has staff come in 9 to 3, 4 to 10 each day, and he has a good life. It's very good.
And he gets to ask them to leave if he wants, and calls them when he wants them back, and he's getting more independent, which he enjoys, and he wants that.
So I think the thing that with Thomas's story is I think that I've known you in a few different roles. I knew you as a team leader, and then I left that role and I became your kind of planner facilitator to help figure those things out, you know, in bigger life things. And I think over the years there was some ups and downs in Thomas and with the Hollands that it was helping figure some of that stuff out.
Planning and facilitation has always been part of this organization. That's what we call it today. Back then we didn't call it that. In the 1970s, people like Al Bennett helped people figure out tough stuff in their life, and he was really good at that. Mary Kovacs and Karen Green came along and did some training around planning, 24-hour planning. For the first time, it was pulling together the person, their family, support people, and anyone else who knew the person well. And we were really, really lucky in the mid-'80s to have a project called the Quality Assurance Project, which brought in people like John Lord and John O'Brien, Marcia Forrest, to really challenge us to think about what we were doing and how we were doing it. So let's talk about what happened after the 80s were done. What happened in the 90s?
Well, 1990 was a huge year, and there was a big change because basically we laid off all of our staff from programs and rehired them back to work for a person and their family on teams around that person. So that was really important, and it also separated off planning services. And the purpose of that was to get away from the conflict of being providers of service, and we were able to kind of focus on the person better, listen to what they wanted, and help them be creative and innovative in problem solving. The downside of that was that there was conflicts that came up between services and planning, and there was role confusion, and sometimes that tension was healthy and led to some really good outcomes. Sometimes it didn't. So it was overall, I think, really brought us a long way in being able to provide great service. I think the 90s was also, it was also a community building time, and a lot of that work came out of planning as well, because there was lots of committee work. We created a facilitators network here in Perth County that also involved people in Huron County too.
I can remember the chair I was sitting in around the table with all of the Perth County group, and we were discussing what are we going to do, what are we going to do. And I said, we really could use some training, because there's lots of people who want to do the same work that we're doing, but we can't teach them, and they need to learn how before they start. And we applied for a grant, we got the money, and we hired John Lord and Charlotte Dingwall to create a curriculum for us, which they did.
Yeah. And they're still using to this day.
They're still using.
Yeah.
Yes. It did a lot of bringing people from the province together, which was a first, because before it had not been very successful at that.
And the provincial network, as important as that was, I think what we learned was that local work is really the best work and the first work, and working in partnerships. So the other, I think, important piece about the course that we offered was that that's where you first heard about core gifts and the work that Bruce Anderson was doing. And we really dove into that, and we've been working on that for over a decade. It's been a huge piece of the planning services we offer people,
but also connecting with other folks in our community and area.
It really opened our eyes to looking at how we were approaching some planning / facilitation stuff. It was looking at a person, who they really were.
And valuing them.
And valuing that. And then talking so much about belonging, which was really the purpose of why you help people figure out where they want to go so they can find the place where they feel like they belong. And the gifts work really, really moved us ahead on that path. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, people were still focused on running programs. And programs grew and expanded. There were more and more residential programs, there were more and more work type programs, and yet there were people still falling through the cracks. So there were people still going to institutions, even though here in St. Mary's we'd brought people home, all that we knew of from our community, back to our community. There were people all over the province who were still going to large institutions. And I think people like Al Bennett and people like Mary Kovacs and some of those people through the Quality Is project showed us that things could be a lot different if we just focused on the person. And that was fine because we'd already been doing it, but provincially it wasn't really happening except maybe in some very small pockets. And at that point we didn't know where those small pockets were. People were coming here to talk to us about, why don't you have any group homes? Why are people living in their own apartments when, you know, they used to live in a hospital? So I think we were really pioneers in actually implementing planning with people.
We were married in Turkey and he was conceived in Turkey, but we wanted to raise our child in Canada, so I had to come back on my own because RF needed to be sponsored to be able to come to Canada. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get him to Canada in time for the birth of John, so when John was 3 months old, I took him back over to RF's hometown in Selçuk, Turkey. And we waited a few more months and the whole family came back to Canada in September of 2001. When John was about 2.5 years old, he was officially diagnosed with autism. I still remember Jennifer Leslie came out and I wasn't aware of the services that they offered. So what Community Living had was they have grant programs where they have students over the summer and that. So we were able to get summer help for John through the Community Living program. The coping became very difficult probably around the age of when he was about 10 or 11 and that. There was a lot of self-injury. So I remember it was like the day after we had gone down to London and that, and I went in to speak with Marg McLean, and she just gave some examples of the kind of programming that they did do, and she did see some possibilities of things that maybe could be done for John. The real issue that we didn't have resolved was what the housing was going to be, because the way we understood it, we could get the support workers around his day and that, but where he was going to live we did not know. And then sadly I had a brother who he had cancer, and it was by the spring of the following year that his cancer just suddenly advanced, and he passed away in June of 2016. And so myself and my other brother, we made the decision to leave the property in the name of the estate, and we would fix it up inside so that that would be John's housing option. And that's the house we are in now. It worked well because it was a perfect size, a bungalow 2-bedroom house, and with you know, not too large grounds to look after.
This is
always in my beside my head, always question, yes, like what's going to happen future. When he's living to London for 6 months, first 2 weeks, if I don't mistake, 2 weeks we don't see him because they're saying you have to get used to here, and then we take him every weekend, bring him home. And then after 2 weeks, I go to Friday afternoon. I pick up him. He knows I'm coming in the door. He's in the door, he's taking the shoes, grab my hand, let's go. But Sunday before 5 o'clock, we have to bring back. I don't want to take him back. She take him always, because I can't take him this.
The costs of sending someone to a group home is about the same kind of budget that we can get in services around his own home, in his own town and that. And we were just very lucky that we had the housing option, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't. So that certainly was a piece that helped. What they do is they come up with a plan so that they're trying to figure out who the person is and what kind of programming to do around him to figure out what to do with his day and that. And I know it's a good philosophy, again, that comes from community living, is the idea is not to you know, restrain or control everything. Like the individual, they have a code of where the individual has rights.
We learn patience, and you must understand kids. I'm not a religious person, but I believe something. So what I believe, maybe God will give us to John, and we will look after him. And then when we pass away, maybe because of him, we go to heaven. We don't know. This is my guess. So, but it's hard, very hard. But I say again, patience, very important.
Every human being has some deficits, and so it's not to stigmatize somebody who has a disability, because we all have our deficits and that, and just to recognize the strengths. And one of the interesting things I always found about John, and that was, I think, with having the absence of some of the social connections that we have, he also has the absence of kind of like an ego. He doesn't worry about what he's going to look like or how much money he makes, or I think that's really kind of cool.
John's family has shared his story, and I know John as a planning facilitator here at Community Living St. Mary's. I've known John for a number of years now, and he's really grown over the years. When I first met him, he was in elementary school, and now he's a young man in high school at DCBI. So as a planning facilitator, I've spent time with John and his family to walk alongside them throughout different processes in his life. And so we've looked at how does he spend his time, what does he enjoy doing. Running was one of the things that we know John does really well, and not always in a positive way has he done this. So we wanted to really look at, you know, how do we take that interest of his and turn it into a positive.
John is 18 from St. Mary's. Awesome teenage boy, super energetic, has always had this passion to run, had no outlet to run. And Stephanie kind of made that happen and took what she knew about him that he loved to do and made that something positive in his life, and something that he didn't hear, no, stop doing that, or no, stop running away from us, and where could we take him to make that a positive factor. And we worked with Stephanie and with John and with John's workers as well, and we've got him out running most Fridays of the summer.
We feel confident with the running that John's been doing with Katie and Dave. It's been a great experience to see them build relationship.
My name is Tracy Rossetti. I'm a sister of Carrie Ann Muir,
And this event started 16 years ago. It's a 5K walk run, and we're here to build community and raise funds for a great organization, Community Living. So if you haven't met my sister Carrie Ann, she's awesome. She was put into an institution. The light was looking pretty dim in terms of her quality of life, as well as if she'd make it back into community.
The way that St. Mary's Community Living decided to help us was to hire an independent facilitator to take on the job of bringing Carrie Ann home.
We're very happy, relieved, and we really look forward to having Carrie Ann home.
They suggested forming a support circle around her, so we did that, where we probably had about 30 people in total who would come to different support circles where we would plan and see what Carrie Ann needed and get her home ready for when she came home. There were all kinds of renos that had to be done, furnishings that she needed for her home, and all kinds of different things. And even that, we were never familiar with a support circle before. It was the best thing they could have suggested, because that was a huge help. Danny and I, at that point, were probably burnt out, and the kids, and couldn't have done it on our own, so we had a lot of support that way.
I saw an ad in the paper from Community Living looking for someone to support a young person in the community, and I have no idea why, but I immediately thought it was Carrie Ann. It wasn't my field, it wasn't something that I'd done before, but I was very excited. We started training at Carrie Ann's house on Mowat Street. Charlotte Dingwall came and did some training with the staff. We also got together with the family a lot, and we did some out-of-the-house training. We did some color training so that we sort of all knew what type of personality the team had and how we were going to blend together. So there was an intensive period of about 3 or 4 weeks, I think, where the team was meeting every day and spending a full day together.
We have Carrie Ann home, and it's been over 18 years now, and look how relaxed she is to be at home. And she's loving it, and the entire family is loving it, and community loves it, because she's out in community all the time. She's doing really, really well, and I think it's only because of the love and support of all her friends and her family and her community around her, and her support workers are amazing, and everything we went through with the planning and facilitation to make it happen.
We will never be able to repay St. Mary's and the Association of Community Living for what they've done for our family, but we will continually every year make it our mission to let them know how much we love and appreciate what they've done for us.
You know, across the last 20 to 30 years, I think, you know, what we're saying is planning has been so important really in helping us meet our goals and our mandate as an agency, and it continues on to this day. We certainly have a lot of new challenges, and one of them is there's lots of people in our county who don't have access to any planning or any service, and that will be important to think about as we move forward.
I have known who Facil was in that organization for a number of years prior to becoming executive director. I knew it because of the history and the involvement that it had and the impact it had on sort of moving forward and forward thinking around planning and facilitation. There was an incredibly strong group of people that came together in Perth County who believed that there was a need to respond to families in a different way in terms of what they want, how that would look like in their lives. We knew that good services are still really critical, but we think that people should be dreaming a little bit different and acting on things that are real important to them in their lives. And that's why planning needed to be maybe outside of the organizations, and families were asking for that. That group of people, visionaries, I believe, started meeting in 2009, and from that birthed Facil in 2011. This group of people were really committed to the vision. That vision was really loud and clear, and they had to act on it somehow, some way. And you know, really, Community Living St. Mary's was very instrumental in birthing Facil, you know, and it launched and was able to be sustainable for a number of years, and that's the history. which has been so incredibly important to where we are today. Families want this, but they can't afford to buy it. So how do we keep this sustainable has always been an ongoing issue. Thank goodness for the dedicated board of directors, and the vision that happened back in 2009 is alive today because of that.
I have been on the board of Facil from the very beginning, which was in March the 11th of 2011. I've enjoyed it very much, and I still am on the board. My son is 55, his name is Jeff, and he met Barb Levitt when he was probably about 25. And they became fast friends, and through him, I met Barb. Well, we had a lot of conversations, and she said the first thing that we should do possibly was to get a circle of support around Jeff and around me. They came up with ideas that I wouldn't have even thought of and were very supportive. And that's probably the first time I've had support too, as well as Jeff. Finally, he had kind of a permanent home now with a family living above, and he's on the main floor. And because that happened so long ago, I'm talking more than 25 years ago now, I knew a little bit about facilitation and independent facilitation and how much it helped Jeff and how happy I was with it, that it was the answer. I, as I said, was on the board along with another parent and 2 people that we support, and it really was the executive directors of different agencies in Perth County, St. Marys being one of them. And then we started planning. It was something new that we were looking at and trying. The government was interested in that time, and we did get some funding from the government to start. And so we were able to hire some facilitators. We were amazed at how many people that we could help and how their lives changed through it. And I find the board now is great. We still have people that we support on the board to help us through, and we will always have parents involved too, because I always feel they know what's best for their son or daughter. We've made quite a difference in probably over 100 people's lives. It just made me feel so much better knowing that there was so many other people out there that knew Jeff as well as I did, and it would say to me, well, why not do that? Well, let's do that then if that's what Jeff wants to do. There's no reason why Jeff shouldn't live as full a life as your other sons. And so we have to keep it going somehow.
That's great. I think that's great.
And I don't think there's any other parent that would say it any differently. I have such peace of mind now, knowing, what he's up to every day.
Community Living St. Marys and area has been part of this community. It was made by this community. It was developed by people who lived here, people from the outside, so St. Marys and area.
I am from St. Marys originally. I was born in 1968, so just over the 50 plus. And I went away for 20 years to have my family in Toronto. My son Mitchell was born in 2005, and he has a developmental disability, which is called Pitt-Hopkins syndrome. We decided we didn't want him to live in a large community where people would know him. So we inquired about moving back to St. Marys. And my first stop was Community Living St. Marys and area. Mitchell is now 14, and he is in grade 9 in a fully inclusive environment. In 2008, I decided to run for town council and was successful by a vote. And that was the beginning for me for my external advocacy, really trying to make changes locally. The council supported me in my mission to set up the advisory committee. And that was really, really important, and really important for Laura Langdon. She was the member who had a single focus, and that was to provide true accessibility to the pool. And here we are at the Pyramid Recreation Center in St. Mary's. It was opened in April of 2008, and it is accessible. We have a ramp, but what we found is not all people could use the ramp. And that's when Laura was demanding singular focus to get a lift put into the pool, and we've done so.
So my name is Vanessa Vandisher, and I'm a full-time day guard here. So you can find me a lot during the morning, guarding in the morning, guarding in the afternoon. I'm leaning on the lift we have here at the Pyramid Recreation Center, which we do use quite regularly. We can get all of the public up and using the pool regardless of any barriers or any restrictions that they have. So if you do come and you do need the lift to use to get in and out of the pool, just let a lifeguard know and we can help you.
We've had an accessibility committee for 3 terms now of municipal government, and to really put a focus on accessibility with our staff. Community living staff member actually worked with the engineers to design the road and the sidewalks especially, and we really value that input.
What we saw today, including this wonderful playground in the background, is just exceptional. Along with the town, service clubs and many groups have joined forces with community living and believed in some of the same values around inclusion and belonging and participating and contributing, and that's what makes our town so great. We've got a really high level of volunteerism in our town. The families that came together back in the 1960s trying to find good alternatives for their kids and find ways for their kids to contribute really set the stage, I think, for organizing a group that would come together around contribution in all kinds of ways. So Community Living St. Marys and area has worked with the town of St. Marys forever on things, and we want that to continue. Our relationship is good. We've gone through many mayors, many changes in our town, many councilors with different interests, and we've always come back to trying to work together to make this community a better community for all of us.
Well, I hope you enjoyed those films. The stories are beautiful, and I feel so grateful. And I don't want to cry because it is really meaningful to see so many changes in so many people's lives through the years. And it's really a wonderful thing to see 100 people at least be interviewed and participate in a way that they want to tell about their unique experience with this organization, which is near and dear to many of us who, kind of live here and invest here. So I have a few little thank yous. I also want to just mention that many of you will know that this is phase 2 of the Stories Project. The Stories Project really started back in 2016, and that's when 9 short films were developed. 6 of them are individual stories, and then there are 3 stories about people first, about housing, and about core gift. And I just want to mention that just because those stories are equally as wonderful, and they're on our website and on our YouTube channel, including Mac in some of them. That's great. I just want to mention that. This phase 2, the history, the collection of these stories was just huge. It was a huge undertaking, and our project coordinator, Marilyn Haywood, she read minutes, she searched photos, dug through boxes, phoned and emailed trying to find people. It was an amazing amount of work. What initially seemed to be a big but manageable project turned into much more, with one story leading to another, leading to another. I feel like I'm repeating a couple things that Marilyn said earlier, but we didn't share notes, I promise you that. It really did. It was such a big undertaking, and for Marilyn, I believe it became a labor of love, and one that she and her partner Eric are probably pretty glad to see the end of, to be perfectly honest. That, along with Giving Tuesday this week, has been quite a time. Anyway, we can't thank you enough, Marilyn, for your curiosity, your persistence, and your steadfastness to see this project to a successful completion. It has been big, so thank you so much for that. Of course, Marilyn's core gift, yes. What we know is that Marilyn's core gift is about bringing people together, and this was given over and over and over again in the development of these films. So thank you, Marilyn. I want to also mention our filmmaker and advisor, Simon Brothers of Powerline Films, and his partners, Luke and Mark. They were able to tie together our words, photos, and film images into beautiful and pointed stories. They shared their gift of story and filmmaking, and they were patient and they were open and remained committed to this project during the editing of hundreds of hours of film footage. And I have to say that Simon works kind of 24/7, 7 days a week. I got a text from him the other night. I think it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. It was like, okay, Simon. So Simon is we really appreciate your commitment to us, Simon. So thank you so much. The realization of our goal to capture community living's history through the collection of stories told by the people themselves was a huge achievement, and one that we can be proud of. With gratitude and sincere appreciation, I thank the 100+ people who generously gave their time, energy, and enthusiasm to this project. They told us their story the way that they could only do it. So thank you for trusting us with your stories. It really very much appreciate it. I would like to say, so thank you. Many of the people who are in this room were part of these films, and that's so exciting. I also want to let you know that there's loads of people who are watching this from the comfort of their home or from their workspace. I ran into Deb Hodgkiss yesterday from Pi, who said, "Oh no, we're watching it tomorrow at the office." So anyway, I just want to say that there are many other people, so I appreciate all the folks who are watching from home or from your other places other than here. We just appreciate it. And for the 6 panel members who are here today, Joan and Bud and Kathy, thank you so much for being together. It's such a pleasure to see people who have spent and invested and committed for 30 and 40 years in their community and in people. And that's so wonderful. And a big thank you to Max and Rebecca and Al. Max, you are a young voice, and I see you, Mackenzie, Laura, Mike. There's a few people here who are all part of this younger voice, and you're the folks who are going to push us in the ways that we need to be pushed in order to do the right things as we move forward as an organization. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the support of your families. Because many moms and dads are here today, and it really makes a difference for us. So thank you very much. And I have one more little quick thank you to Alan Slater, because, and Al's going to probably say, "What the heck are you doing?" But I just want to say a big thank you to Al, because Al is one of many long-term volunteers with our organization. I look at Sheila back there. Alice was present earlier. There are many people who have been part of this group in so many ways, and I just want to say a big thank you to you for your, again, steadfastness and sticking with a mission and a vision of a place where all of us belong. So thank you, everybody. I don't know if folks have anything that they'd like to add or questions that they have. At one point, we had thought we would do some back and forth with people who are listening in from home, but we did get, I think, well, I won't say we, but Stephanie did get a text from someone saying, "That made me cry." So I just want to say, if anybody has anything, parting comments. You're making me cry. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, you know what, we really just want to say a great big thank you, and we have a few flowers which we will bring around to the folks that will receive them, anybody who's interested, and of course hospitality has to be part of it. COVID-19 has been a difficult thing for an organization like ours that depends on meeting together and spending time together, and so this is the first event of, and I hope it's the beginning of many more. So anyway, with that, we really appreciate your time, and yeah, thank you so much.